This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. My name is Julian Baumgartner, and for the past 26 years, I've been a paintings conservator at my studio here in Chicago. But today, instead of doing my actual work, I thought it would be fun to procrastinate a little bit and take a look at conservation in the cinema. So let's get at it. So let's start with everybody's favorite, Toy Story 2 from 1999. Believe it or not, I've never actually seen this.
Oh, thank goodness you're here.
Is the specimen ready for cleaning?
Actually, that looks a lot like my father, who I learned conservation from. An old Swiss man with big, burly hair and a crazy mustache. He didn't have a cool tool chest like this, but he had all the tools. And this is really a cool little toolkit he's got. It reminds me of Mary Poppins. I have a massive studio and all of my stuff barely even fits here, let alone a little traveling tool chest. Was he at the dentist now? Starting right on the most important part, the eyeball. That's not how it's done. We make tests in inconspicuous spots because we have to learn if the piece can handle the solvents or the materials we're working with. So starting on the face is probably not the best choice. Again, conservators really try to refrain from how much we add. Now, of course, when things are damaged, like Woody's hair, we have to repair it, but we try to take a really minimal approach, limiting how much material we add. Oh boy. What is he, just repainting the whole boot? Yeah, that's a big no-no. That wouldn't be okay. We generally try to remove the scribbling before we do any retouching. Next, we'll move on to the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair from 1999 starring Pierce Brosnan. This is actually a really great movie. Pierce Brosnan is about to steal some art, and this is generally not how art is stolen. It's usually done at night by an insider. It's not high stakes like this in the middle of the day with alarms blazing, but this is how he's going to do it. Oh wow, just ripped it right off the wall. Wow, okay, off the wall, off the frame. Oh, he just folds it in half. Yeah, that's not possible. What he did was rip the painting off the wall, ripped it out of the frame, stuffed it into a suitcase, and then folded the suitcase. All of those things would inevitably end up in the painting being more damaged than it was were he to just lift it off the wall and carry it out. Now, it makes for a great TV or movies, but that's not how art is stolen, and that's certainly not how art is handled. Later in the movie, the museum's sprinkler systems go off and they flood the painting with water, and it looks like their protective track has stopped by two pencils, very high tech, and the painting is about to get wet. And what we're going to see is that the painting is melting off the surface. And this means that the painting that's melting right here is actually water soluble.
It's water paint.
And underneath it is the actual painting, which is done in oil paint. And that's actually totally plausible. In fact, I had a painting in my studio where on the surface there was watercolor and underneath was an actual oil painting. But that's a story for another day. All right, again from 1999, we have Tea with Musolini, and I think that's Dame Judi Dench.
Nonsense. Can't browbeat our dogs. They've got souls just like us. You work in a cathedral. You know nothing about dog souls. Oh, never mind. The light's fading anyway.
What's interesting about this is that she's just one woman on a ladder and with her puppy.
Won't we, Nikki?
And she doesn't really have a lot of equipment, basic materials. It's an open workspace. This guy's coming in to yell at her or something.
Brava signora, sì, la torni quando la vuole. Però I cani la lo lascia là.
What kind of a Christian are you?
And it may seem like this is really unprofessional, like this is not how conservation is done. She's not in a lab. But honestly, a lot of conservation is done like this, and it doesn't take away from her skill or the professionalism. So now you know. All right, so what's this? This isn't a movie. This is a website. Oh, yeah, it's a Squarespace website. I get it. So for the best reactions, go with Squarespace. Hear me out on this. Whether you are running a business and need a place to sell things online, or you're just looking for a place to showcase your work or your brand, Squarespace is the easiest way to do that. And with thousands upon thousands of professionally designed templates that work anywhere and everywhere, they're sure to make you look good. But it's not just about looking the part. Squarespace's platform is robust with plugins to add galleries, e-commerce solutions, search engine optimizations, online scheduling, and more to make your website function as good as it looks. So head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Baumgartner to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Bean from 1997. The 90s were a really popular time for conservation in film. He's clamping it in a bench clamp? Oh, okay, yeah. So he's gonna tear the canvas with that, then scratch it, remove some paint. Good job, Bean. Okay, so now we're going over to, what is this? Household chemicals. We have some bleach, some spray paint, and a big old canister of lacquer thinner. Right, that's gonna be a good choice. So for a piece like this with an ink stain on it, the first approach would be to make small tests to try to lift off some of the ink and figure out, A, what type of ink it is and how best to get it off. And these tests would be done in inconspicuous areas just in case something like this happens, where you get an adverse reaction. And of course, you would stop the reaction right away, neutralize it, and then move on to something different, perhaps something weaker or just a different solvent altogether. But you'd never start right off in the face because the risk is just too high. And of course, what looked like an easy job, piece of cake, is now an abject disaster. It appears here that the solvent he used has just melted through the painting and maybe destroyed it. And that can happen if you use the wrong solvent or you apply the solvent in the wrong way. This is where he needs to stop and call a professional, because professional conservators have experience, we have know-how, we have resources, we've done this before, and we know how to approach cleaning paintings so that we don't melt the face off. But my guess is that Bean is not going to call a professional, and he's going to try to fix it himself. And just as I thought, it goes from bad to worse. And it looks like he's just wiping that face right off, and all that's left is bare canvas. This is what would be considered a fatal, unforced error. Instead of calling a professional, he tried to do it himself, and now instead of having a painting with ink on it, well, he's ruined the painting. And there's really no way to come back from this. You can't undo this. You can't put the paint back.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! Oh, Jesus, God!
Instead of walking away from a series of bad decisions, he doubles down and paints a smiley face on this canvas, which now makes it effectively a collaboration between Mr. Bean and Whistler, which I don't think anybody wanted. All right, now one of my all-time favorite movies, regardless of the conservation content, is Ghostbusters II from 1989. I was only 9 years old when this came out, and it scared the bejesus out of me, but I still love it.
All right, yes. Now I want you to put the Rigo in the arch, under the arch there. If everything you're doing is bad, I want you to know this.
This reminds me a lot of my father when he comes and he tells her that everything she's done is wrong. I experienced that firsthand. It's very, very trauma-inducing.
Well, then how are you doing? How's this Bonington coming?
It's coming along fine.
In the first movie, Sigourney Weaver was a musician, and now she's just pivoted to being an art conservator, which is really not plausible. It takes a lot of experience, training, and education to work in conservation.
I've enjoyed working here, but now that my baby's a little older, I'm going to try to go back to the orchestra.
But other than that, it really does look like a conservation studio or laboratory. There's equipment everywhere. She's got all of the right materials. She's approaching the painting with sensitivity and working in a small controlled area. There are crates moving in and out. Bill Murray being able to walk into the studio, maybe not so plausible, but this does feel real. Now, it being done in the gallery is a little odd. It would normally be done in a laboratory or a specific setting, the studio for conservation. But otherwise, it rings pretty true. I love it when she walks past the painting and Vigo, the destroyer, looks at her and then she gets chills and looks back. I've never had a painting look at me that I know of, but I definitely have gotten chills when walking past some paintings. Sometimes they just get under your skin. I don't know why. All right, up next we have the 2017, much less loved version of Justice League.
What did you do this weekend, Diana?
Me?
What is she holding? Just a brush? Seems like maybe the costume department just gave it to her and said, oh, no, she's got two tools. That's very good. Showing some skill there, gal. I like it.
Shrine of the Amazons, an enormous bonfire burned right behind me, baffling absolute.
She is wearing evening wear, doing art conservation. I mean, she is dressed up to the nines, which, you know, we don't do that because we get filthy here in the studio. We're covered in dust and grime and dirt. So wearing a white bodycon while you're cleaning a sculpture, that is not a good look, even though it looks good. So from 1994, we have Uncovered with a very young Kate Beckinsale. So this all rings really true. She's being really methodical. She's preparing her materials. She's rolling her swabs, using very little solvent. And you see the care in which she's applying it to the painting. She's using a scalpel here, it looks like, to scrape some wax off the surface. This is something that I've had to do when candles drip on icons and paintings. And one thing that just keeps ringing true is how methodical she is, how careful she is, and how much she respects the work that she's doing and the paintings that she's working on. So this is all really accurate. This is how we work as conservators. Now she's lighting a cigarette, which, aside from, you know, being bad for her health and putting cigarette smoke onto the painting she just cleaned, she is surrounded by highly flammable solvents. So this is a definite no-no. This is something that would never happen in a conservation studio. I don't care who you are or where you are. You would not be lighting a cigarette while working with these solvents. It's bad for you, it's bad for the painting, it's just bad. Now again, we have the painting seeming to come alive. I don't know if she spent too much time with those solvents or, you know, what's going on, but paintings aren't alive. Sometimes they feel like they are, particularly the ones that aren't cooperative and they feel like they're haunting you and laughing at you, but I digress. So here we see her taking a sample and they have suspended it in resin and they're now sanding it to get a cross section that they're going to look at under the microscope. And this is going to allow them to do, maybe it looks like some spectrometry, Raman or high resolution mass spectrometry, to figure out what the materials are that are on the painting. And this is a really cool way that science can inform the work that we do in the studio. So it looks like she has now uncovered some hidden inscription or something that was previously obscured. This has happened in the studio to me many times, and it's one of the most exciting things a conservator can come across. Now, one cool thing here, she is doing retouching. That's where we replace the missing paint, and she's using an Italian technique called trateggio, where instead of matching it perfectly, she kind of matches all these little dots or lines so that from a distance you can't really see the damage, but as you get closer it reveals itself as an addition by the conservator. This is a really old technique and museums use it a lot. Private practice conservators like me, not so much because our clients generally don't prefer it, but again, this rings really true. Hats off, kudos to whoever was a consultant on Uncovered. You did a fantastic job. And continuing with the theme of young actors, we have Colin Firth here from A Month in the Country from 1987. Looks like he's working in situ, in a church, in a building on site, as opposed to in his studio or his laboratory. Now his setup is a little bit more artisanal, doesn't look as laboratory specific, but again, this doesn't take away from the work that he's doing. Every conservator has to decide how they're going to work, with what materials and what approach. And as long as they're doing it within an ethical framework with the right materials and respectfully, that's fine.
I shan't mind if you touch it up.
Touch it up?
Well, any bits that have faded, you can fill them in, as long as it's appropriate and tones in with the rest.
Tones in with the rest.
So this is a conversation I've actually had with many clients. They want me to do things to change the painting, to make it more palatable to them, to remove a mustache, to add a mustache, to make it prettier, make her smile. And that's something that we as conservators not only don't do, but we can't do. We're not the artists. We're the technicians in service of the artist. So when a client asks me to make her prettier, to get rid of a double chin, I have to tell them that's how the artist painted it, and that's how it's going to be. I can make it look as good as it possibly can look, but I can't change it. And anybody who says otherwise, that's not conservation. So there you have it, a whole bunch of movies where conservation is depicted from serious and accurate to hilarious and very, very inaccurate. But you know, it's nice to see conservation get some screen time. I mean, most of us work in our studios behind the scenes, and if we do our jobs right, nobody ever knows we were there because you can't see the work we've done. So kudos to all the producers and writers and actors who are thinking about conservators. Make a couple more films and I'll be back for a second go-round.